Hi, and welcome to another podcast from Ian Wallace, the Messed Up Counsellor. Today what I'd like to look at is something that a lot of people find quite daunting and quite awkward, and that's being self-employed. Now, within the counselling fraternity, a lot of people go into self-employment, or as we call it, private practice, because there's very few jobs, none being a counsellor, which might astonish people. So a lot of people go into working for themselves and then start that massively hard process of, in a sense, marketing ourselves and getting us out there to the world. And that's not an easy one, to be fair. And it takes a while to get yourself in that frame of mind whereby you speak your truth, your ideas, your voices are heard in the outside world through media or some form of directories or those kind of things. Now, there's lots of ways that you can market yourself nowadays, thankfully, and this is one of them. Obviously, doing podcasts or doing some kind of media process that explains what you do and how you do what you do, and maybe interesting things for other people to understand. But for most people, that's not an easy one. Counsellors, by the very nature of counsellors, are not usually people who blow their own trumpets. They're there because they want to help somebody else. And we find it very hard to help ourselves sometimes and understand what it is that we can achieve, we can do. So that marketing yourself, being in private practice, is not an easy process, as I've said. A lot of people move into counselling believing that it's a job, a career like any other, whereby you get a job and you get paid and you get holidays and you get all the things that employed people get. But with our kind of world, the counselling world, it's never going to be that easy. As I say, the jobs are limited, and most people find that getting into a paid position extremely hard, unless you're going to work for some kind of external organisation, and if you've done a placement, then presumably you were working for some organisation. But then that doesn't necessarily give you a good income. Surprisingly, most counsellors will actually only be on bare minimum wage. And if you think you've spent 4, 5, 6 years getting to be professional, getting to have the qualifications to do the job we do, and invested in yourself to do that, because obviously not many people pay you while you're going through the training process, it's our own expense for most people, then it's very hard to kind of come out with something that justifies all that investment. So when we're looking at being a counsellor, you need to have a think about what it is you're going to do when you are a counsellor. What aspects of this career, this work, are you going to do? Because you could be a counsellor voluntarily with organisations for many years. And there's a lot of organisations that will take on qualified counsellors, but they will do it for very, very small remittance. If you're looking to build a career and have a living wage and to be self-employed, that's a very small proportion of counsellors in training that will go on and do that and be successful, obviously, because it's not the kind of role that you would have a recognised income every month on month, and it's going to be hard financially in order to create that and to make it happen. Now, if you're good at marketing, if you're good at selling yourself, then that's going to be a lot easier, obviously. And people will be able to kind of see that, and they'll engage with you through your media processes. But if you're not able to do that, that's a really hard job in order to sell ourselves. And I've been doing this now 30 years, and I still find it hard to do this, even though you probably will look at this and say, oh, well, he's good at talking and connecting and those kind of things, or maybe not, as it could be. But that process is not an easy one for anybody, no matter how good you are at communicating. So what you have to think about is what am I going to do when I get qualified? How am I going to earn a living? Most counsellors will not earn a living from just being counsellors. Most counsellors will only work a very small number of hours face-to-face or online with clients. The recommendation is, or used to be, about 18 to 20 clients a week, which is about 18 to 20 hours. Now that sounds really good. Oh, I'd love to have a job where I can only work 18, 20 hours a week. But for every hour you spend in front of a client, then you'll have about another hour doing paperwork, admin, notes, CPD, supervision, all the other things we need to do in order to make that work. And so with 18, 20 hours, you'll be doing about 36 hours, 40 hours a week. Now for some people, if they were looking to try and work 36 hours as a counsellor doing face-to-face work, that would be really hard and exhausting, because in our world, the counselling world, we expend a lot of energy in just being in the room with the client and listening to the client and working with the client. It's a very tiring process holding people's emotions, quite naturally. So from that point of view, it's not going to be something that's going to be a full-time occupation in front of a client. And for anybody that is doing 8, 10 sessions a day, 4 or 5 days a week, I would imagine that would be very limited in how long you could keep that up. I can't do usually about 18 hours a week. That's kind of my limit. After that, I'm in an issue where I might not be able to give full attention to the clients. And certainly if you're doing back-to-back work, so you're doing 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day. So that process of being a counsellor, surviving as a counsellor, being self-employed, is not an easy one, as I've said. It can happen, you can do it, people do. But a very small percentage of people actually make a living being a counsellor. Most people will do the counselling business on a side, maybe evenings, weekends, maybe 1 day a week, those kind of things, but then they will have a paid employment as well, or they'll have other areas of work that they can do, such as I did with training, coaching, business development, all those kind of things. We're bringing in income as well at the same time as being a counsellor and a supervisor, of which I am. So that process of being one thing, a counsellor, is not usually the only way that you will have to earn a living. You'll have to do more than that. The training establishments do not tell you this. They don't let you in on that, and for good reasons. They obviously want to make a living by you paying them to train you. So if they tell you, actually, you need to be really mindful of this and think about these before you engage in the training and paying us, that's not usually a good business model. So they'll take the training, the income that they get from you, and put bums on seats, which is understandable because they need to survive in this financial world. So when you're looking at this, be mindful, and if you're certainly looking at this podcast and you're thinking about going into the counselling world and being a counsellor, then have a wider view of it. Yes, it's nice to help people, and we love helping people get where they want to be. That keeps us going. But you have to be realistic in how this is going to support you and your family and all the bills and all the kind of input you have in this world. The other aspect of self-employed is, unfortunately, if anybody is self-employed watching this, is that there's no guarantee of any income at any time. So you may have 3, 4, 5, 10 clients, but they may not stay. They may not keep with you. They may choose to not need counselling, which is great, because that's obviously what we're trying to do. But they won't necessarily do long-term work. And when you see the rates of what we charge per hour, they do initially look attractive. You know, I charge £60 an hour to do individual work, and I'm not at the top of the kind of charges that I see. And I think that's reasonable, to be fair. But when you think about that £60, do not think that's what you're going to get in your bank account. It looks attractive as a headline figure. But if anybody's self-employed, you know we have tax to pay, we have insurance to pay, we have professional fees to pay, we have the renting of offices to pay, we have all the business costs of Wi-Fi, travelling, a whole range of things that we need to pay in order to provide that £60. So what I normally say to people, if you look at the headline figure that you're thinking, and then you have it, that's sometimes where you're going to be. Now, you might be less than half. If you're obviously employing an office and paying rent rates, then that might be less than that. But kind of maximum will be half. So if you're working £60, as I do, then you're looking to take home about £30 after all the costs. And then you've got the tax to pay. And that, unfortunately, is something that you can't get out of because it's HMRC, so they always want you to pay your share. And quite rightly so. But then what you have to think of, okay, if it's not this, every week's going to be 20 clients, every week's going to be 10 clients, whatever it is, then you need to advance that process and build in some kind of contingency fund, because there are going to be months when you have a holiday, for example, so we need holidays. There may be a lapse in clients connecting to you for whatever reason, because it doesn't stay the same all the way through. It comes up and goes down and comes up and goes down. So you need to build in a contingency fund in order so that when you are lower on income that particular week or month, you have something in reserve, something to enable you to carry on. What I look at from my own point of view is I look at having at least 3 months in the bank of the maximum that I would need in order to run my business. And I don't touch that. It stays in an account, it doesn't go anywhere. And then if I have a poor month, I will draw out of that account. And then when I have a good month, I put back into it, but I keep the level the same all the way through. And it's about 3 months in advance, because 3 months is not a bad kind of cushion, if you like. And when you're doing all that and you're looking at how you manage that, then you have to do something fairly awkward. You have to value yourself. And that means that you have to put a figure on the services that you provide. That is really hard when you first start, as anybody who's first started in any business will understand, because we don't normally value ourselves in that way. Now, you could look around yourself, in the other counsellors in the area that you work, and you could say, well, okay, the average is X, so I'll charge X. Absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that, but you have to say what you are worth by doing that. And money is a very strange commodity, and you might find that strange to say, but money isn't money. Valuing ourselves by charging for our services is a very hard thing sometimes to put out there, and some people feel very uncomfortable initially in saying how much they're worth, because they are doing this work because they want to make a difference, they want to help people, and it's very hard to kind of say that's got a value. So a lot of people go to charities, go to people who do low-cost counselling, or maybe free counselling for a lot of people. And so the business that we have is always a battle to do that valuing process. Because if somebody challenges our rate, our value, then we have to feel comfortable holding it. We have to So one of the first things that I, and like many other people, had to come to terms with was that process, evaluating myself. How much am I worth? How much an hour am I worth? How much do I need to charge? So, as I've said, there's a whole range of costs involved in delivering the counselling process. So it's a good idea to kind of check those out first, then look at what it could be that you could earn and how many hours you could earn it for. So then per week or per day. So then what you have to do is find what that amount is going to give you in relation to what you need to earn to provide the services and how much you need on top of that to have a living. So when you're doing all those kind of calculations, don't go on, I'm going to be full with clients. Go on the assumption that you're not going to be full. Go on the assumption that whatever you feel comfortable in working, say 20 hours a week, then try and look at a third of that, which is the amount that you are possibly going to take. Most businesses, the rule of thumb, if you like, that any business people kind of use, is that it usually takes 2 to 3 years to get established. So that's quite a long time. And certainly if you haven't got income from some other job, career, role, then you're really going to not be in a good place. So what people in private practice usually do is they have their role, which they build over that 2 or 3 years, and they also have a paid role. So we kind of use our employment as the cushion that pays the bills, and then the counselling comes onto that, and we build the counselling over that period to make sure that we can survive, we can keep on going. As you're doing that, and you take about a third of what you really want to achieve, that also means that you'll have less pressure on you to provide an income because of bills, family, things that you need to do. So when you're looking at that, try and engage with that in your mind, in your head, before you even get to the point of contemplating being a counsellor. A lot of the organisations will initially, when you're training to be a counsellor, take you on as a placement. They'll give you their clients to work with, as long as you're on a suitable qualified course, I would imagine, or their course, depending on the organisation. And then you'll get that working with that experience, that knowledge of putting all that kind of academic theory, if you like, into a practical process. And that placement usually lasts for 1 or 2 years. Now, placements are not easy to get. When I first started, your placement really was part of your training package. So the universities or the colleges would have people on their books that they would put their students into. That happens less and less nowadays. So most of the learning establishments say that you have to find your own placement. Now that puts a bigger pressure on yourselves, because if you don't find a placement, you can't practice. If you can't practice, most likely you can't finish the course and get the qualification. So it means that there's a lot of pressure on you to find that placement and find the people that you would like to work with. And placements aren't around every corner. Most of the major charities will organise some aspect of placements within their portfolio, but it won't be all students. There will be some experienced and qualified counsellors in their books, which they may pay, but their normal payment rate is between about £12 and £16 an hour. Now you look at £12 and £16 an hour and you think, that's not an awful lot, and it isn't. It's probably bare minimum really nowadays, but that's the only thing they can offer, because again they are providing a very low cost service usually. although more and more are actually charging the going rate, or you have to go through some kind of process of filling in forms to see what your earnings and your capacity to pay is really. So it does more on a donation fee kind of basis. So I'm not trying to put you off. I know it sounds like that. I do. But when I first started, I was in corporate world, so I had an income. I started doing 2 or 3 hours on a night for a charity, and they did the training for me, and they put me through those kind of processes. So that was helpful, because it meant I didn't have to worry about income. I didn't have to worry about earning potential. Eventually I transferred off that, and I started working in the voluntary sector and getting paid to obviously produce contracts and things for the voluntary sector. So it was a transition. So I transitioned from paid employment to private practice, and that was done over 6-7 years in total. So it was quite a long journey to be the person I am now with 30 years under my belt. Now I wish people, somebody in the training establishment would have said that to me when I first started, because that would have made it a lot easier for me to understand that these things, pitfalls, are there. They're not things I'm making up, and that process means you would have to kind of re-engage with that. Hopefully that's made sense and given you some ideas about being in private practice and the kind of hurdles that we have and the things that we go through. I wouldn't be in anything other than private practice myself now. I don't think I could actually work for an employer, to be fair. I think I'm unemployable after 30 years in private practice. But it is something that you do need to be mindful of and think about. If that stimulated some thoughts, ideas, and given you some more kind of understanding what that business is, then I'm great. That's what I was hoping to do today. If you like the podcast, please like it, share it. You never know if one of your colleagues might be interested in some of the things I'm saying. And hopefully you'll go forward and enjoy your practice as you live in this wonderful world of being a counsellor. And it is, to be fair, a wonderful world. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care.